Episode 20, The Road to Ohio. Welcome back to Hidden and Distorted History of the Church, where we uncover the lesser-known truths about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or the Mormons. My goal is to reveal the authentic historical facts behind the Mormon Church. Recap. Last time, we exposed how Joseph Smith evaded conviction in his 1830 trials through legal loopholes and perjured testimonies. This week, we dive into the attempted coup in Fayette, the so-called conversion of Sidney Rigdon by Oliver Cowdery, and introduce a new figure into our timeline, Parley P. Pratt. Get ready to uncover Pratt's concealed role in the unfolding story and what it reveals about the true nature of these early events. Part 1, Putting Down a Coup. In September 1830, upon returning to Fayette, Joseph Smith faced a new crisis of leadership. Members of his congregation had been eagerly asking where the New Jerusalem, the prophesied Zion, would be located. As a leader of the Restorationist movement, Smith was expected to provide an answer, but he could not. This lack of direction left his followers in limbo. Within the Restoration movements, prophecy and revelation were considered gifts that could be bestowed upon any worthy individual. Hiram Page, one of the 8 witnesses, claimed to have received a revelation about the New Jerusalem. This revelation posed a direct threat to Smith's authority. If Page could discern the location of Zion and Smith could not, it would imply that Page possessed a higher level of divine revelation, undermining Smith's leadership. Smith could not tolerate this challenge to his supremacy. Smith's response to Page's revelation was swift and severe. As he declared, "To our great grief, however, we soon found that Satan had been lying in wait to deceive and seeking whom he might devour. Brother Hiram Page had in his possession a certain stone, by which he had obtained certain revelations concerning the upbuilding of Zion, the order of the church, etc., all of which were entirely at variance with the order of God's house, as laid down in the New Testament, as well as in our late revelations. As a conference meeting had been appointed for the 26th of September, I thought it wisdom not to do much more than converse with the brethren on the subject, until the conference should meet. Page, like Smith and the Whitmers, had his own seer stone and used it to obtain his revelation. Smith's anger was palpable. He forced Page to destroy his seer stone, effectively eliminating any rival claim to revelation. Smith condemned Page's revelation as satanic, a striking irony considering that just months earlier, Cowdery had faced similar accusations. Smith continued to denounce Page's revelations, asserting, "Finding, however, that many, especially the Whitmer family and Oliver Cowdery, were believing much in the things set forth by this stone, we thought it best to inquire of the Lord concerning so important a matter. And before conference convened, we received the following. 1. Behold, I say unto thee, Oliver, that it shall be given unto thee, that thou shalt be heard by the church in all things whatsoever thou shalt teach them by the Comforter, concerning the revelations and commandments which I have given. 2. But behold, verily, verily, I say unto thee, no one shall be appointed to receive commandments and revelations in this church, excepting my servant Joseph Smith Jun, for he receiveth them even as Moses. 3. And thou shalt be obedient unto the things which I shall give unto him, even as Aaron, to declare faithfully the commandments and the revelations, with power and authority unto the church. 4. And if thou art led at any time by the Comforter to speak or teach, or at all times by the way of commandment unto the church, thou mayest do it. 5. But thou shalt not write by way of commandment, but by wisdom. 6. And thou shalt not command him who is at thy head, and at the head of the church. For I have given him the keys of the mysteries, and the revelations which are sealed, until I shall appoint unto them another in his stead. And now behold, I say unto you that it is not revealed, and no man knoweth where the city Zion shall be built, but it shall be given hereafter. Behold, I say unto you that it shall be on the borders by the Lamanites. 11. And again, thou shalt take thy brother Hiram Page, between him and thee alone, and tell him that those things which he hath written from that stone are not of me, and that Satan deceiveth him. 12. Behold, these things have not been appointed unto him, neither shall anything be appointed unto any of this church contrary to the church covenants. D&C 28, 8-12. These verses come from the Book of Commandments, chapter 30, a rare source that LDS, Community of Christ, and a few historians have had access to. This text is similar to what is found in the current Doctrine and Covenants section 28, though the latter edition, revised in 1834, omitted certain failed prophecies. The most egregious part of Smith's rebuke of Page was his cowardice in handling the matter. Smith did not confront Page directly, but instead sent Oliver Cowdery to deliver the reprimand and demand Page destroy his seer stone. This strategic move allowed Smith to consolidate his authority by denouncing any competing revelations as devilish. Each time Smith's authority was challenged, whether by priestcraft or Page's revelation, he conveniently produced revelations to quash dissent. In an additional move to sideline those who opposed him, Smith used this revelation to exile Oliver Cowdery to the western frontier to preach among the Lamanites, Native Americans. As stated, "And now, behold, I say unto you that you shall go unto Lamanites, and preach my gospel unto them. And inasmuch as they receive thy teachings, thou shalt cause my church to be established among them. And thou shalt have revelations, but write them not by way of commandment. 10. Thou shalt not leave this place until after the conference. And my servant Joseph shall be appointed to preside over the conference by the voice of it. And what he saith to thee, thou shalt tell." D&C 28:8-10. Thus, Oliver was sent away not voluntarily, but as a strategic move by Smith to maintain control. This episode is just one piece in a broader pattern of how Smith managed dissent and consolidated his power. We'll soon return to significant figures who will connect these events and reveal more about the ongoing struggles within early Mormonism. Part 2. Who was Sidney Rigdon? I've already covered Rigdon's history in my Spalding video, so I won't rehash it all here. I'll only touch on what's necessary to keep this timeline clear. Sidney Rigdon was born in 1793 in St. Clair Township, Pennsylvania, a stone's throw from Philadelphia. He grew up on his family's farm, which he worked until his father's death in 1810. By 1818, after his mother sold the farm, Rigdon had already begun his journey into religious leadership. Baptized into a Calvinistic Baptist movement by Rev. Phillips in 1817, Rigdon quickly rose through the ranks, earning a preaching license by 1819 while apprenticing under Rev. Andrew Clark. Moving to Trumbull County, Ohio, he soon became a prominent figure in the religious community, preaching alongside Adamson Bentley, who would later become his brother-in-law. In 1821, Rigdon's path crossed with Alexander Campbell, the influential leader of the Campbellite movement. Their alliance grew, and Rigdon became the pastor of the First Baptist Church in Pittsburgh with Campbell's support in 1822. However, the partnership was short-lived. A bitter schism erupted between the Campbellite followers and the Redstone Association Baptists, resulting in mutual excommunications. Between 1824 and 1826, Rigdon's life took a more mysterious turn. He worked as a journeyman tanner in Pittsburgh, crafting book coverings, and later as a journeyman printer for Patterson, a publisher in Philadelphia. These jobs would later fuel accusations that Rigdon had a hand in creating the Book of Mormon, alongside Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery. In 1826, Rigdon returned to Ohio, where he became a leading figure in the Campbellite movement in Mentor. But by 1830, his journey took a dramatic turn, which we will see very soon. Part 3. Meeting Parley P. Pratt, Undercover Agent Man. Before we proceed, it's crucial to introduce Parley P. Pratt and grasp the immense significance of his role in shaping the foundations of the early church. Parley P. Pratt was born in Burlington, New York in 1807. By his early 20s, he became deeply involved in the religious revival movements sweeping the United States. In 1829, Pratt joined the Campbellite movement, where he quickly became a fervent disciple of Sidney Rigdon. Pratt's commitment to the movement led him to preach and spread its teachings throughout Ohio and the surrounding areas. While traveling to visit family in western New York, Parley P. Pratt came across a copy of the Book of Mormon in the hands of a Baptist deacon. The moment he opened it, he was struck by its contents and, convinced of its divine origin, set off for Palmyra to learn more. There, he met Hyrum Smith, who further fueled his conviction. On or about September 1st, 1830, Pratt was baptized by Oliver Cowdery in Seneca Lake, officially joining the ranks of the fledgling church. Not wasting any time, Pratt was ordained as an elder and soon introduced his younger brother, Orson Pratt, to the faith, baptizing him on September 19, 1830. In October 1830, Pratt's journey led him to Fayette, New York, where he met Joseph Smith. Impressed by Pratt's zeal, Smith invited him to join a missionary expedition to preach to the Native American tribes on the Missouri frontier. It was during this mission that Pratt, alongside his companions, made a critical stop to visit his mentor, Sidney Rigdon, a meeting that would set the stage for significant developments in the early church. Part 4. Setting the stage for 1830s Ohio. The history of the church, Vol. 1, is exceptionally deceptive in how it presents Sidney Rigdon's introduction to the gospel and how this event is fed to church members through the official church history. Let's dissect a portion of Joseph Smith's own statement to reveal the subtle manipulation at play. This is from pages 120 and 121 of History of the Church, Vol. 1. They continued their journey until they came to Kirtland, Ohio, where they tarried some time, there being quite a number in that place and vicinity who believed their testimony and came forward and obeyed the gospel. Among the number was Mr. Sidney Rigdon, and a large portion of the church over which he presided. Joseph is speaking about Oliver and his companions, whom he sent westward to preach to the Native Americans as earlier stated, including their stop along the way in Kirtland, Ohio. He mentions that they preached and converted many, including Sidney Rigdon. But there's something more here. Smith elaborates on the conversions happening under Parley P. Pratt, which he downplays, but this is key. The first house at which they called in the vicinity of Kirtland was Mr. Rigdon's, and after the usual salutations, they presented him with the Book of Mormon, stating that it was a revelation from God. This being the first time he had ever heard of or seen the Book of Mormon, he felt very much surprised at the assertion, and replied that he had the Bible, which he believed was a revelation from God, and with which he pretended to have some acquaintance. But with respect of the book they had presented him, he must say that he had considerable doubt. A few paragraphs later, Smith subtly reveals that the very first person Oliver and his companions met in Kirtland was none other than Sidney Rigdon himself. Again, Smith insists that this was Sidney's first encounter with the Book of Mormon, just as Smith claimed that he and Rigdon had never met before 1830. Why the repeated denials unless there's something to hide? Smith then records, upon this they expressed a desire to investigate the subject and argue the matter, but he replied, no, young gentlemen, you must not argue with me on the subject, but I will read your book and see what claims it has upon my faith, and will endeavor to ascertain whether it be a revelation from God or not. This reeks of Rigdon playing his premeditated part in the con. Wasn't Rigdon already prophesying about a book that would resemble the Book of Mormon? Could this be the very book he foretold? If I were in Rigdon's shoes, having predicted a forthcoming book, I would certainly connect it to this new arrival. But Rigdon didn't. Instead, he planted seeds for what was to come. After some further conversation, they expressed a desire to lay the subject before the people, and requested the privilege of preaching in Mr. Rigdon's chapel, to which he readily consented. The appointment was accordingly published, and a large and respectable congregation assembled. Oliver Cowdery and Parley P. Pratt severally addressed the meeting. At the conclusion, Mr. Rigdon arose and stated to the congregation that the information they had that evening received was of an extraordinary character, and certainly demanded their most serious consideration. And as the apostle advised his brethren to prove all things, and hold fast that which is good, so he would exhort his brethren to do likewise, and give the matter a careful investigation, and not turn against it without being fully convinced of its being an imposition, lest they should, possibly, resist the truth. Rigdon, a charismatic leader, who had been priming his followers for years about an ancient book yet to come, and a new church, now stands here, discovering what he claimed to be true all along. Notice how Parley P. Pratt, once a follower of Rigdon, is conveniently one of those presenting the Book of Mormon to Sidney. How ironic indeed. I'm not one for conspiracy theories, but the deeper we dig into the origins of the Church of Christ, the more we uncover an intricate web of connections. Take, for instance, the overlooked familial ties between Joseph Smith Jr. and Oliver Cowdery. They were not just fellow believers, but also second or third cousins, a fact both they and the church seem keen to keep under wraps. And then there's Sidney Rigdon, Despite official church narratives, multiple testimonies suggest Rigdon and Smith had met several times, both in Ohio and in Palmyra. Here are just a few of those accounts. Pomeroy Tucker, a Palmyra journalist and state representative, wrote in 1867, "A mysterious stranger appeared at Smith's residence in the summer of 1827, holding private interviews with the money digger. His visits were frequently repeated. Sidney Rigdon had played his part in the background, and his occasional visits at the Smiths' residence in 1827 were noticed by uninitiated observers as those of the mysterious stranger." Lorenzo Saunders, another Palmyra neighbor, recalled in an interview, "In March 1827, I saw about 5 or 6 men talking near Joe Smith's house. One was well-dressed. Samuel Harrison Smith told me it was Sidney Rigdon. I saw him again in the fall of 1827, just before Joseph went to Pennsylvania." Now we have Parley P. Pratt, once a devoted disciple of Sidney Rigdon, suddenly reappearing in his old community, but this time preaching a new gospel and a new church, exactly as Rigdon had prophesied earlier. If you ask me, it's hard not to see this as a conspiracy unraveling before our very eyes. Anyhow, let's move on to what we can prove without a doubt. In January 1831, Oliver Cowdery, who had been Joseph Smith's right-hand man since the inception of the Book of Mormon, was sent over 1,000 miles away to the western borders of the United States, ending up in Missouri, to preach to the Native Americans and convert them. During his absence, Sidney Rigdon smoothly stepped into Oliver's role as Joseph's second-in-command, or so it seemed. Rigdon had now converted to the very Church of Christ he had long prophesied would come, one with an ancient book akin to the Bible. With his conversion, he didn't come alone. He brought his well-prepared Campbellite followers into this new faith with him. As these events unfolded, the new year arrived, bringing with it Joseph Smith's third church conference, held once again in Fayette from January 1st to 3rd. At this conference, Smith delivered a new revelation, instructing the New York Saints to relocate from New York State to Kirtland, Ohio. This directive was aimed at joining Sidney Rigdon and the majority of the church members who had already congregated there. Smith's revelation read, "For behold, I say unto you that it is not expedient in me that ye should translate any more until ye shall go to the Ohio, and this because of the enemy and for your sakes. And again, I say unto you that ye shall not go until ye have preached my gospel in those parts, and have strengthened up the church whithersoever it is found, and more especially in Colesville. For behold, they pray unto me in much faith. And again, a commandment I give unto the church, that it is expedient in me that they should assemble together at the Ohio, against the time that my servant Oliver Cowdery shall return unto them. For behold, here is wisdom, and let every man choose for himself until I come." Even so, Amen, 1-4. Smith's new directive was more than just a logistical move. It was a strategic consolidation of power. By relocating the saints to Ohio, Smith aimed to centralize control and integrate the church's operations with Rigdon's faction, effectively weakening any remaining influence of the New York members. The timing of this revelation, coupled with the command to wait for Cowdery's return, underscores the calculated nature of Smith's maneuvering to secure his leadership and the church's unity under his authority. A BYU article called Lamanite Mission of 1830 to 1831 tells us, "In 4 weeks in northeastern Ohio, the elders baptized approximately 130 converts, 50 of them from Kirtland. These new members made Kirtland their headquarters. Among the converts were men who would become leaders in the church: Sidney Rigdon, Frederick G. Williams, Lyman White, Newell K. Whitney, Levi Hancock, and John Murdoch. 2 other prominent men, Edward Partridge and Orson Hyde, joined the church soon after the missionaries departed. By the end of 1830, membership in Ohio had reached 300, nearly triple the number of members in New York. In December, after learning of the Great Ohio Harvest, Joseph Smith received a revelation directing the New York Saints to gather to the Kirtland area, DNC 37-1-3, which most did in 1831. The church in New York was in dire straits, impoverished and on the brink of collapse. Smith had already mandated that members financially support both himself and Emma, a decision that had sparked the first rebellion against him, accusing him of priestcraft. With such a small, struggling congregation, this directive was increasingly difficult to enforce. Enter Kirtland, Ohio, a strategic solution that promised relief. Smith explained the situation. A few miles from Mr. Rigdon's home in Mentor, at the town of Kirtland, lived a number of the members of his church. They lived together and had all things common, from which circumstance has risen the idea that this was the case with the Church of Jesus Christ. Kirtland offered a means for Smith to secure the support he needed without having to work for a living, something he meticulously avoided throughout his life. For a time, Ohio seemed like a promising refuge for Smith, providing stability and financial support. However, this move came at a cost. Oliver Cowdery, Parley P. Pratt, Frederick G. Williams, and other missionaries heading west faced significant hardships, revealing the harsh realities and emerging tensions within the expanding church. In Ohio, while Smith could enjoy relative stability, the difficulties faced by his missionaries highlighted the growing divide and the challenges of maintaining unity and control as the church's influence spread. Summary: Joseph Smith, facing a weakening grip on the church, needed to expedite his plans. He prepared to relocate the church to Ohio, capitalizing on Sidney Rigdon's groundwork and the arrival of Oliver Cowdery and Parley P. Pratt. The time had come to abandon New York State and consolidate his followers in Ohio. In our next video, we'll dive into the tumultuous early days in Ohio, revealing how Smith continued to exploit the members for his own benefit. Please watch for future videos, and thank you so kindly for watching. This is the Ex-Mormon Informant signing off for the day.